Hi everybody, hope you're all well. So I've had McCartney 3 now for about 48 hours. I got this on Monday night. And I said then, when I did the unboxing, as it were, of this video, that I was going to do a review today, now that I've had a chance to listen to it plenty of times. That's what I'm going to do now. I understand that some of you might want to wait until you've heard the album before you watch this. Completely understood. But I'm going to go through what I think of McCartney 3 so far. And I'm going to be honest. If I don't like something, I will say I don't like it. If I like it, I will say so. I'm also, just a reminder, on Friday, in 2 days' time, on the 18th, the release day, 9 PM UK time, I'm going to do a live stream where I'm going to, with headphones on, I'm going to hit play on the album, and I'm going to invite anybody watching to hit play at the same time at your end, and we can listen to it together. We can talk about the album as we go through, a communal listening experience. So you're very welcome to join me for that if you wish. So, McCartney 3. I'm still sort of getting to grips with the fact that this thing exists. It's certainly not something we could have predicted, but what I did on the first time I listened to it on Monday night, I wrote a lot of notes, which I've revised a little bit as I've gone along, but I've got them all on my phone here. I'm going to go through what I've basically been thinking about the album as we've gone through. So let us start at the beginning with, I'll go through song by song and then my sort of overall thoughts on the album later on. So it starts off with Long-Tailed Winter Bird, and the immediate thought here is that this is a song that, you know, anybody who's a fan of Paul McCartney and who plays guitar is going to want to have a go at playing this song. I've done some, I've done a couple of fairly shoddy attempts at it myself, but it's a good sort of fun one to play that's not that difficult as well. It feels like, as a start to the album, it feels to me like it's a nice follow-on to the end of Egypt Station with Sea-Link. You'll remember the sort of bluesy jam that it does at the end of Egypt Station. And then this, if you immediately follow that with this does kind of follow nicely for it, a little bit more up-tempo. It's quite sparse production on this song. When you sort of break it down as to what's there, there's a lot of air there. There's not actually that much going on. He's left it a lot of room to breathe. And there's a couple of times during the song where it feels very Magical Mystery Tour. The sort of flutes come in and it feels a little bit like flying or something. So there's definitely sort of vibes of the 60s there on this song. It's an album intro kind of song, an opener, and you'd sort of expect that to be quite short as a result. So I was surprised that this song came in at over 5 minutes long. You know, sometimes when you have a bit of an album opener or an intro to an album, you'd expect it to be maybe a minute or two or something like that. So it does go longer than you'd think. But, you know, it's a memorable melody in that guitar to kick the album off with. So, I also think that song is made to be played loud. That is a theme that I'm going to mention a few times in this. This album, for me, works a lot better if you can crank the volume up. Just seems to hit you a lot better, I think. Second song, anyway, Find My Way. This is one there's a lot of people will have heard this because it's been doing the rounds as a really, really bad quality MP3, and it just sounds completely different, as you would hope when you finally get the CD, or hopefully you'll be getting your vinyl copies soon as well. It immediately, right from the start, it reminded me of Home Tonight, you know, the song that came out after Egypt Station on that Record Store Day vinyl. Sounded very much like that. It's quite an Egypt Station-y vibe to Find My Way. But it sort of feels like, this feels like a grower. I'm learning things as I'm going through, as I've played it sort of 5 or 6 times. It's certainly revealing more to me as we go along. There's a lot more production in this than the opening song, and it's got a cheeky false ending as well, so Paul's sort of in playful mood, I found, with this song. And the other thing that I thought 2 songs in is that Paul's not in a hurry with this album. You know, he's happy for these songs to breathe and have a bit of time to just do what they need to do. He's not rushing into them. So it's, you know, it's a good start 2 songs in. The third song, Pretty Boys. The opening few seconds, the guitar. If anybody knows the song Chinatown by Liam Gallagher, that immediately hit me as sounding a lot like that. This is what I tend to do on reviews, folks. You'll find as we go along, I like to do a review by sort of comparing it to what I think it sounds like, whether that be another song or a style. That's the way I'm going to do this. The lyrics, it felt to me like a kind of a 60s Carnaby Street vibe kind of thing. It's almost like it's a sort of a modern day toned down follow on to something like Dedicated Follower of Fashion by the Kinks. It's not that kind of song at all, but the sentiment of it, the kind of people that it's describing, it's like a sort of a mature, slower version. And again, I found that with a few of these songs, they seem like more mature and relaxed follow-ons to certain other songs, and I'll mention those as we come along. But the thing with Pretty Boys is, it's one of those where it sort of sounds on the face of it quite simple. The more you listen to it, the more you realise it's really nice, and this has grown on me so much. First time I heard it, I thought, oh, that's quite nice. I've listened to it about 5 times now. Well, the whole album I've listened to about 5 times. Pretty Boys, I think, is a fantastic song now. That's really grown on me. It's like a really charming song. There's something it reminds me of. There's another song it reminds me of, and I cannot for the life of me think what it is, but I will get there with it. But Pretty Boys, really enjoying that. Next up, Women and Wives. So this is the first kind of piano-led song on the album, and it's not a love song to a person. It's more like a love song to a collective of people, women and wives. And it's, again, I mentioned like a sort of a relaxed, mature follow-on to a previous song. This feels like it's kind of that way for Lady Madonna. Is this a 2020 follow-on to Lady Madonna, where he was sort of singing about his love for that kind of person? It feels as though it is that kind of thing to me. And he starts a lot of the lines of the song with the words "hear me," but he sings it very similar to the sort of Fats Domino style that he did "Coquette" on Run Devil Run. If you think of how that song goes, when it's like "hear me," it does a very similar kind of thing many times in this. I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but I certainly noticed. So 2 songs in a row here where it's like a tribute to groups of people, and Pretty Boys of the 2 is by far my favourite of those. We've then got Lavatory Lil. So this is the one that's, there's been a lot of talk about this one. Paul has said that this is him basically having a go at somebody particular who's wronged him in the past, and he says he will never say who it is. And I certainly can't figure out who it's about after listening to it a few times. But this one feels like one that he would have probably really enjoyed playing live this year if things had been different. Mind you, if things had been different this year, the song might not have existed in the first place. But it does feel like one that's probably made to be played live. And I don't mean like a big stadium song, but just a good sort of fun play-along song. It's got a nice sort of Wings era lead guitar in it, I felt. And it's got that classic Macca trick of it's got a descending bass line, dum 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 dum, where he holds the melody that he's singing level. So you've sort of got melody and bass and a descending bass playing off each other. He's been doing that for decades. It's a classic McCartney trick that I think he probably learned before fame hit. He learned how to do that, and it's certainly in effect here. So that is Lavatory Lil, and where are we on here? The other thing that I felt with Lavatory Lil was that if this hadn't been an album made solo, if he'd have been able to bring all his mates in it, you could imagine him phoning up Ronnie Wood and saying, "Ronnie, come and play some nice little blues licks on this song I've got called Lavatory Lil." You can maybe imagine Ringo drumming on it. It could have been that kind of a song where he could have had some mates playing on it. But anyway, nice song. Still no idea who it's about. Next up, Deep Deep Feeling. So this has been getting talked about quite a bit as this song. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's wow is my word for Deep Deep Feeling. It's in some ways it feels like a song that Paul's never made before, this kind of song. But there's parts of it where I just listen and I think, wow, if this had been made with an 80s style production, this could have been like a press to play B-side if it had been done in a different style. But also in the way that it is, it sounds nothing like a press to play B-side. But I can imagine it being that with different production. It's a really interesting song, is this, but it's more like it's more like a soundstage kind of thing rather than a traditional song. You're not going to be singing deep feeling while you're in the shower or in the bath. It's more of a vibe. And the thing that I got with this was that, you know, if you were listening to something like, let's pick I Want to Hold Your Hand, for example, you could play that through your phone speakers, or you could play it through a rubbishy old AM radio. It's still going to be a great song. You don't want to do that with deep feeling. I think you need to appreciate it through, if you're listening to it in good sound quality, you're going to get the benefit of it, because it's kind of like that soundstage. There was also parts of it where he sort of sings up high, and it reminded me very much of How Kind of You from Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. You know the part in that song where he's singing, I thought that all was lost, I thought I'd never find someone quite as kind as you, and he's doing it at high register. There's a part of this song that's very much that kind of style. And the other thing that I noticed is, and I'm probably going to do a video about this at some point, just gathering together all the examples of where Paul has done this throughout his career. This is quite a heavy song, and the last 15 seconds he eases that tension. It makes it nice and light and gives it a nice happy ending. He has been doing that so many times throughout his career, and I certainly want to do something where I talk about the number of times that he's used that trick. But it's certainly a memorable song, but you need to be properly listening to it through a decent system, I think. Otherwise, it's probably not going to make much sense. I suspect. Sliding next. So this is the first song that breaks the McCartney 2, McCartney 3 tradition of Paul working on his own. So this has got Rusty and Abe from his band appearing on the song. And this is a big guitar, big distorted guitar production number. Sounds very similar to me to Arctic Monkeys' AM era. There's a couple of songs like Do I Wanna Know, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head, that's very much this kind of style of led by a big guitar riff. It's not my favourite song on the album. I've kind of had enough of it by the time I hear it when I'm listening to the album, because it's a bit full on in your face, I think. It's, if you think of something like Cut Me Some Slack that he did a few years ago with the guys from Nirvana, I think that's a much better version of this kind of song. But, you know, it's good to have, it's variety. Paul's great at doing variety on albums, and it certainly brings some variety to this. Next up, The Kiss of Venus. So this is a really lovely song, and it's one that Paul's voice is very upfront in this song. It's, you know, you can hear exactly what's going on in Paul's voice here. He's not disguising it in any way, and it's one of those where he's got a lovely sort of little acoustic guitar riff going on, which the melody that he's singing then matches. And if he was using his 1980 style voice, that style of voice, you could imagine this as coming out as something like One of These Days or Waterfalls from that album. It could have been that kind of a song. But the acoustic guitar style that he's using, the finger picking style, reminded me of something like Mama's Little Girl, so like quite early Wings style as well. But it's a gorgeous little song that certainly would have sounded a lot different with Paul's 1970s or 80s voice, but now it still sounds really good because you're hearing who Paul McCartney is now. You know, there's no hiding from this. He's putting himself out there with this kind of singing, and it still sounds nice. We're hearing the 78-year-old Paul McCartney. I have no problem with that. The next song is Seize the Day. So I immediately kind of thought with this that this was the biggest Egypt Station vibe so far. I don't know if this is a song that he had from those sessions or not, redone, but it certainly sounded to me like this, like Do It Now or something like that from Egypt Station. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing this on the vinyl version, which I'm hoping I'll be getting in the next day or two. I've had a dispatch notice for my rough trade white vinyl, so I'm hoping that's coming soon. But I thought, so, like the snares on the drums, they could sound really nice on this. I could imagine this one being a song that gets quite a lot of radio play potentially, because it does sound. It's probably, there's not much in this album in the way of sort of big traditional pop songs with a chorus, for example, but this is probably about as near as you get. You know, you're not going to find on this album something like a For You, a Come On To Me, or a Queenie Eye. There's not really that kind of song, but this is probably about the nearest you're going to get. And I found that some of the guitar on it, the sound of it is really similar to like Brian May's classic Queen guitar in places. So listen out, because it's quite low in the mix, but listen out for that, see if you can hear that. We've then got Deep Down, and I'd heard sort of, I tried to avoid reviews as much as I could, but I'd heard a few people saying that they didn't like this one. This was the one that they didn't like on the album. Now, I found it's interesting. Paul opens it, it's like a choir boy voice that he opens the song with, which was interesting. And I immediately thought with this song that if you think of a song like Frank Sinatra's Party, that bonus song from the Egypt Station era, if you imagine that Frank Sinatra's Party is that party at 10 o'clock at night when it's in full swing and everybody's happy and everybody's jolly, Deep Down feels like this is the same party but 5 hours later. This is 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's still hanging on by a thread. They've had too much, and this is that. It's that kind of a song, but much later in the night, and it's come down a lot. Now, I quite like Deep Down, to be honest. I think there's a good song in there. You could interpret the lyrics as being a little bit like some people have interpreted, like For You, for example, where, you know, Paul's a 78-year-old man and he's singing about getting deep, deep down, and it all sounds a bit raunchy. Well, fair enough. But I think it's a very interesting vibe to it. And like I said, have a listen to it with that sort of 3 a.m. when there's still some people knocking about barely conscious. It's got that kind of a vibe. I think it's quite an early 90s style of song as well, but if it had been made then, the production would have been so much different. I could imagine it as with a 90s production being like an off-the-ground B-side, potentially. It's that kind of thing. But I think some of the production choices now that Paul's making over the last few years are much more interesting than what he was doing 25, 30 years ago. So yeah, I quite like that song. We then get to the end, Winter Bird, When Winter Comes. So we've got a little blast of the opening song again. That little guitar riff again comes in just for a few seconds, and then we've got a song that was actually recorded in 1992, I believe, When Winter Comes, and I think it was possibly even the same day as Calico Skies was recorded, and it's a really interesting song. It's like a cross between Heart of the Country and When I'm 64. I was thinking that if in When I'm 64 Paul had been singing about some characters, you know, if he was a character singing that song, this is like the same character 30 years later. This is what that character's doing now. You know, he's thinking about making sure that the garden's ready for winter, and he's thinking about flying off for the winter and getting a bit of warmth, and then coming back and doing what needs doing to the garden. I think it's the same person from When I'm 64, but mixed with Heart of the Country. But it's a really charming little song, and it's got a nice melody to it, and it's got like a Her Majesty style guitar on it, so that's really nice. That's the end of the album, and it's 44 minutes long. Now, when I listened to this, like, to be honest, 2 or 3 times I've listened to it, I thought it's 10 minutes shorter than Egypt Station, that's a fact. But when I finish listening to it, I keep thinking, I don't feel like I would be within the last 10 minutes of Egypt Station by now. I would feel like I would have a lot more left to go. So it goes by really quickly, I think. I think the tone of the album is more sombre than I was expecting, but still pretty classy. And I'm certain that this is an album I'm going to go back to and learn more and more about. So I got asked a question by my good friend Ben. Asked me a question on yesterday morning, which was the morning after I bought the album. And he said to me, so are you overwhelmed by it? Are you underwhelmed by it? Or are you just whelmed the right amount? I thought that was a good question he asked. And I thought about it and I said, well, I'm not overwhelmed. I said I was overwhelmed with Egypt Station the first time I heard it. With this, if I said I was whelmed just the right amount, that would be an understatement. I am more than that. You know, I'm somewhere between the two. So it's certainly, you know, there's always this fear with me that, oh God, what if he makes an album that I really don't like? And that has not happened with this. You know, I like this album. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and I think I'm going to learn. It's an album that's going to reveal itself more as you go along. So I would say I am more than whelmed, but I'm not overwhelmed. Okay. I think it's got some elements I've mentioned of Egypt Station has been a continuation of it, but at the same time it's quite different. And I also feel that it sort of fits the McCartney 2 vibe. I think it's worthy of being a McCartney named album. But if I had to smash 3 Paul McCartney albums that I'm going to smash together, and the end result is that McCartney 3 comes out of it, I would choose Chaos and Creation in the Backyard for its sort of sombre tone, Electric Arguments, and Egypt Station. I think if you smash those 3 together, you're approaching what sort of comes out with this album. It's as far removed from something like New album as you can get. I think it's nothing like that. So overall, yeah, I'm enjoying this album at the moment, and I think I will enjoy it more as I go along. I don't think it's Egypt Station height, but I don't think I had the right to expect that either. But I think I'm going to learn a lot from this album as I go along, and I do think it needs to be played loud. It really benefits from having some volume, and it definitely, songs like Deep Deep Feeling, you need to sort of experience it through a proper system and not listening through sort of crappy headphones or anything like that. So that's my thoughts a couple of days in. You know, it might change over time, but that's what I'm thinking at the moment. I would love to know what you think about the album. As always, let me know. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people telling me that you think it's absolute guff. Some of you without ever actually having heard it, because I know that some of you do that already on my comments. But let me know what you think of it. Let's have a chat about it. And if you want to join me on Friday night, 9 PM UK time, to just listen along to the album in a communal environment, I would love to see you. But if anybody is still here after all this time, still watching, thank you very much. And I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.